Hello and welcome back. In my last episode, I came to the realization that my whole concept of logistics has been wrong in Satisfactory. And as such, we've reworked our train logistics to run on 2 levels so that trains will stop queuing and have their own dedicated lines based on production, in theory improving throughput, allowing us to scale up our factories, and better yet, it's all done through interconnecting blueprints, which makes setting up lines a breeze. But as they say, theory will only take you so far. So today we're going to put it to the test and build a 23,000 iron ingot smeltery. What could possibly go wrong? And though we've built large facilities before, notably our diluted fuel plant, which you can see here, it's not quite to the same scale that we're looking for with this one. So why 23,000 iron ingots per minute, I hear you ask? Well, throughout early access, I've only built factories that teetered on the edge of large, and I want my 1.0 playthrough to really push both my personal experience in Satisfactory, but also the boundaries of the game itself. So that is exactly what we shall do today. But this facility won't just produce 23,000 iron ingots per minute. It's going to produce a lot more. So let's break down the plan. Now, this is the area that we're going to be building in. We've already mentioned how the train station on the right is going to be for iron. That's those 2 in that section. And then to the left, we're going to have 2 for the copper production. And then in the bottom section, we're going to do Caterium. We may need to expand these at a later date. I'm not 100% sure, and it really depends on how the logistics runs. I'm a little bit concerned that we'll have pauses in the throughput when the trains are loading and unloading. So if that becomes an issue, then we'll have to rework the system slightly. But we will have the iron smeltery in the middle section just above the stations. Then we're also going to have an iron facility that will produce the basic iron resources. So we're looking at iron rods and iron plates specifically at this point. That is going to be to the right of the build. Then we're going to do a copper smeltery, and that will produce about 16,000 copper ingots if it's running at full production. That's going to be behind the iron smeltery and probably above it as well. We like to have tiers in the thumbnails of different heights just to keep it looking interesting, so I think that will work well. And then we're going to have the Caterium, which will most likely be on the mountain below. So we've got a lot to get through, and the first thing that we need to do is start bringing the water over, and that's because we are going to be trying to make the most out of the iron, well, all the ores that we're bringing in. So we'll be using the pure recipes. Speaking of which, we need to unlock the copper one, and we can see we're going to be per 35 iron ore that we're bringing in using up 20 water, and the reason that we're doing that is we get a lot more iron ingot for our iron ore ratio. So for this, we are going to be bringing in 16 lines of 780 iron, so that's 12,480 divided by 35. That is a lot of refineries that we're going to be placing, and then we times that by 20, which gives us 7,131 water just for the iron ingots alone, which of course 7,001, well, let's say 7,200 divided by 600, which is the Mark II pipe, that is 12 pipes worth of water. Thankfully, I already have this blueprint that I have previously made, and it's a really simple one. It's just 4 lines of Mark II pipes, 4 high. That's 12 pipes. So what we're going to be doing with this is running this all the way across to where we're taking our water from, which will be the coastline, and we get to use auto connect, and providing we line it up correctly, like that's not going to work, but if we manage to line these up correctly like that, you can see all of these have auto connected. Then we can unsnap and we can just drag this all the way along to the end, which is going to allow us to transport the water with the least amount of clicks. The other thing that we need to do... Ooh, actually, I might need to pull this back. Because the plan is to run the pipe along this section here. Let's see, will that work? It's a little bit too tight, so I'm going to have to push this back. Let's place this one here, and we will connect these together. Then we'll bring that across to the second foundation as well. And that should allow us, providing we have the copper sheets, to place quite a nice curve. I've lost my crate. It's not here. My resources have just disappeared, unless it's over here. Anyway, I'll find it. So we're going to run this all the way up to, well, let's run it up to here for now. And the plan would be to take the water up to the next level where the refineries will be. But to do that, we do need to get all of these pipes over to the coast. And then later on, once we've got everything set up, we'll start worrying about actually setting up the extractors. And here we are, the thin blue line of pipes running throughout the rocky desert here. We've got it all the way to the end where the coastline is, and we'll bring it down just after that train track there before we start extracting all that water. And that thankfully will sort us for the water for this section of the build. But we are going to have to come back here afterwards, I think, unless we do the water somewhere else, for the copper and the Caterium, because that's going to require a lot in itself as well. The next thing that I want to do is all along the outside of this build, I'm going to enclose it. We'll also do this on the other side as well, just giving it a basic fencing so that people can't run along the outside. That won't take me too long to do. I'll probably add something like just a metal wall, I think, underneath. That'll keep it nice and clean. Yeah, that'll look quite nice. And then the next thing that we need to do is actually work out how big the facility needs to be. And the plan is going to be to bring the water up through here. We will then have our line going up to where the smeltery is. And the reason that we're going up is going to be to optimize the space that we've got, because this is sloping upwards. If we build on a lower level, say along here, we have less room to work with because we're already starting to dig into the hillside. Whereas if we start from up here, we've got all the way to the top edge of the hill. So the next thing that we need to do is to work out roughly where all of this is going to be. I think we need to have maybe a little space along here. Bring that up, and we will bring this all the way along so that actually we're overhanging the train line ever so slightly. As for how much room we need, that is a fantastic question which I've yet to consider. So if we go back to the maths, we have pure ingots. So we do 16 times 780, 12,480. We divide that by 35, which gives us 356 refineries, and then we times that by the output. Oh no, we don't need to do that just yet. But 356 refineries, if we divide that by, how many can we fit into a blueprint? I think we can fit 4 refineries to a blueprint. Might be 3. 89. That would be 90. Also, we need to check if we have 780 on a line, it's divided by 35. That's 22.285 refineries per row. That is quite a lot. That would be the equivalent of what, 5 blueprints across? I don't think that's going to work for us. We can test it here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're cutting in 5. Oh, okay, so we need to find a way to we need to find a way to reduce the total amount of refineries that we're going to be producing, because 356 is a little much. Of course we can overclock this, right? We grab some power shards. We overclock this to 250%. What would that be? How many did we say? Wait, 22.28. Let's do 22.3, and then we can divide that by 2.5. It's 250. That's 9 refineries. That is not bad, because that would be what, 2 and a bit blueprints. I don't really want to have to manually do a single refinery though. If we do 12 refineries per line, that's almost 1.5 conveyor lines per row, and then we could overflow the rest. I think that's the plan, and then we'd have more than enough room here. So I'm going to start building this out and working out roughly how much space. I think we're going to have to go all the way to the end there. And then once that's done, we'll start prepping the blueprint. And we want this blueprint to auto connect as well. That's going to be really important, so that we can just spam them against one another to make this build really quick and simple for us. And we're also going to need to get rid of those. Do we have any Noblisk? No. But we do have, thanks to our dimensional depot, the ability to produce some, which means we can get started with clearing all of this and then finish blocking it out ready for the blueprint. So I'll see you when it's done. And here we are. So we ended up being just below the lip of that section, but hopefully that won't matter too much. We're now ready to start working on the blueprint essentially, but I wanted to just knuckle down on the lower section of the build first. So the idea of this is we're going to be able to build it quite quickly. So we're aiming for something a bit more brutalist in its architecture. So we're going to be using a lot of concrete, a lot of right angles, but we also want to add some detailing to that as well, which is going to make the build pop. So first of all, we've gone with a lighter outer section, and then on the inside we've gone with the dark carbon foundations, just to give this section a bit of depth. Then, if we look over there, you can see the lip. We have got concrete pillars, and they're going to come down and border this orange light, which should look pretty cool once done. And this is one of the probably the easiest ways that you can just make little sections of your build pop. So we're gonna just place that there, drag that down like so. We can drag that all the way down, and then from here we grab our lighting. We're just gonna place that inside, and it gives us something like that. So just imagine what happens when we do this all along. And here we are. I'm really happy with how this is. It's something that's really quick and easy to do, and it looks great. We just need to work out how to do it for the rest of the build without it being too similar, because I think we're going to need some kind of supports in between the tracks. So we'll work on some kind of support later on. But now let's work on the design blueprint. Now for this, of course, we are going to be using the Mark II blueprint designer. It's going to mean that we can fit more into the build than the Mark I. And we'll start off with placing a floor layer. This is going to be really useful because we're going to run our logistics underneath this, or well, on top of this level, and then we'll have our actual build align with this, but we'll give ourselves a 1 meter roof or top floor just so that we have a bit more space, because buses under the build always get a little bit cramped. So now that we have got the copper floors sorted, the next thing that I want to do is to grab our refineries. We're going to try and squeeze if possible. I think we can. It would be great if we could fit 4 of these within the blueprint designer. 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Next, we are going to add conveyor floor holes. As I mentioned, the resources will all be underneath, and then we can connect this up. And as long as it's faster than a Mark II, it'll be fine. And then the next thing that I'm going to do, as this is a pure iron refinery, we don't have any liquid output. So we can block the exits with one of these. I think this is just a nice, clean way to close off a section of pipe. Although I'm not sure about that color. Maybe that's quite nice. Now with all these blueprints, it makes sense to me to always put a little bit more effort in on the front side of setting them up, rather than adding additional detailing later if possible. So I'm going to design it, and hopefully it'll look pretty cool. And then I'm going to grab some kind of beam. In fact, it can just be a basic beam from here to break all of this. Now we are going to do something to make these refineries look less like refineries. I mean, they're still going to look like refineries, but hopefully it'll just add a little bit of, I don't know, something else to it. So I'm going to grab my concrete, and we're going to run this all the way. I'm going to push this back ever so slightly. I'm going to use this to fill in these little gaps. And then once we're done, I'm probably going to get rid of the concrete, but I want to place, if possible. Yeah, look at this. We lift that up. How does that look? Yeah, that's good. We're going to do this all the way along. And the other thing that I was thinking of doing is we have access to these large fans, which look kind of cool. And I was thinking, what if we stick one of these all the way up here? How would that look? Oh, I like that you can't see the sign through it. I really like that. I don't know if we'll keep that color. We might change the color. But the design of this, having some kind of extraction fans, I feel this definitely works. We'll also change the color, something like that. And then we need to get rid of all of these. And then under here, we need to think about how the build's going to look. And I think that starts with having a little corridor underneath, separating the inputs and the outputs. We go with a frame wall, and we're going to do that on both sides. And then maybe either we can use a beam. I'm not sure it's the kind of look that I want to go for. Maybe we could grab a little metal wall all the way down the centerpiece. Yeah, that's quite nice. Quite industrial. I do want to aim for a more industrial look with these builds. Next thing we're going to do is set up our mergers. I'm just thinking whether we should move them forwards a bit. It'd be nice to have the merger on the center foundation. Okay, so I might have to budge all of this up. Yeah, I'll do that really quickly. The things we do for an extra inch here or there. So we budged it up a little bit more. So just a quarter foundation, or I guess a half foundation widthwise, so that these are nicely snug. And now we're ready to do the backside. While I was at it, I ended up getting a little bit carried away, as you can see. So we have a little walkway through the underside. And then I also played around with having the shiny portrait signs just under this, and then using a low barrier to kind of mark the border. And then I thought, well, it looked a little bit boring, just the black there. So we've added a touch of light from these label signs either side, which are the same as that color. So we're coming along quite nicely. The next thing that I want to do is to focus on the water inputs. So we're going to just bring this along, and I think we can place it all the way along. I don't want this to be just a boring line of resources. So we're going to decorate this as well. And we can start off with our small concrete. So we're going to place this just underneath, probably run it all the way to the edge. So if we bring it to there, and then we bring that all the way along, we can then grab maybe our construction fences again, place them along. I know that we're kind of clipping this section, but I quite like it. And then we could do the same maybe on top. I am liking this. Next thing I think we should have is another one of these walkways. We're going to have a lot of walkways in this. And then maybe we can add some, I don't know. I think about what we'll do here. We'll probably add some kind of signs. And then you can see we've got this neatly filled in. We've got concrete pillars all the way along, so we're just trying to stick with that. And then we've got some signs along the outside. I've also, should mention, done the daisy chain link system. So to do this, in case you didn't know, you can just grab any kind of wall or fencing, and you're just going to nudge that up to wherever you want your daisy chain piece to be, which is there. And then you can run this along, nudge it into any of the spots. And then once you're finished with that, you can delete it and you've got yourself a daisy chain system. Last thing I want to do is maybe have some kind of warning pattern this side. Yeah. Suppose we could also add a little... This is my problem. I will start decorating and then I'll just do little bits here and there, adding more and more detail until it's just too much for me to handle. Speaking of which, we need to make sure that this is a blueprint that can be auto-connected. So we're going to have to add... I hope that'll allow that. We might have to budge it back a little bit. But we need to make sure that these are auto-connecting. So we're going to need those on either side, and we're probably going to need to do the same with our piping. The other thing that we need to worry about, actually, thinking about it, is how we're going to fit these in this space. Oh, I know what it is. It's this. It doesn't like us to... Yeah, there you go. It's all about the process, what you place when in Satisfactory. You get away with murder if you do it in the right process, the right steps in Satisfactory. There you go. So before we get too far ahead, let's just make sure that we can fit these. So we mentioned that we need 22.28, which is the equivalent of 5.5 of these. We have a problem. So I have just gone and built this blueprint, and I've worked out that we need a total of 27.5 foundations across, so along this vertices, per line of refineries. So it actually goes into here. So we need to build it much further out. And we also need 80 foundations across for the 16 rows, and that's excluding the bus that we're going to need as well. So we're not going to fit it in this. So we either have to build further out, which is going to take a lot more time, or we stick with the foundations that we've already placed. And I guess what we could do is use power shards and overclock this build. There is one problem though, and that is we're going to need to place down 356.5 of these. If we're going to be overclocking to 250%, yes, we reduce the amount that we need by almost half, down to 140. Actually, I think that's over half, right? Yeah, wonderful. But that does mean we're going to need a huge amount of power shards. The good news is that I know we have enough. We've got 100 here, and then we've got 400 in total here. So we can definitely do that. We have enough for that, but it's going to require a lot more power, which means we're going to have to bring forward our turbo fuel plant, I think. So once we finish this smeltery, or maybe the iron, we'll see how big we can build this, but the smeltery, the iron, the copper, the Caterium, if we can do all of that, we'll then do the turbo fuel build after this. So that's going to be a big build in itself, but it'll be worth it. Right, so with that power sharded up, we're going to get prepped to start placing them. That should reduce the build Oh, you know what we need to think about beforehand? It's no longer 35, is it? So if we have, it's 87.5. Okay, so it's 2 blueprints plus a single refinery. I don't really want to be adding a refinery onto the end and doing all that detail. So what we could do is 3 sets of refineries. That would be 12. and then we overflow the 3.1 extra all the way to the end, and so we'll add 1 or 2 extra lines. The amount that we should save should make up for the extra lines at the end, because we're doing an extra third on each of the lines. The only issue is we'll have to have on the output side, 162.5, 780 divided by 162.5 is 4.8. So every 4 refineries, well, 5 refineries, we're going to need to have a merger taking the resources off. Oh, this is going to be big. Right. With that in mind, we're going to get started with building this. I should mention, if you are interested in this blueprint or the many others that we have, do join us over on Patreon. All of our blueprints, as well as a save tour of this build, will be available on there. And if it's any of the blueprints or any of the saves prior to 1.0, then you can access them for free. Just find the post. Right, let's get started. The problem I think with doing this isn't so much the build itself, it's actually going quite smoothly. We just need to set it to blueprint, and from there we can place this, and then we go to auto connect. Of course, we've run out of iron plates, but don't worry, we've got a iron plate dimensional array, so that should load up pretty quickly. But then once we've found this position, we can click once and then twice, and that's connected. And of course, we need to do this once more. The issue is working out how to bring all the lines down. So I've done the first 8, thinking, oh, that'll be enough, and then I realized I needed to start at the other end. So what I'm gonna do is, knowing that it's 1.5 essentially lines per one of these, is every 2 of these we will take one of those, and they will split off before they go underneath, and they will run to this one here where this connection is. We're going to add in a merger, and then we reconnect this. Ooh, not like that. And we need to make sure that is all connected properly so that the resources can run down and around. So that's the next thing that we need to work on once this is all set up. But it's coming along. It's going to look really good once it's done, providing, of course, there aren't any issues. But I'm going to finish placing all of these, and then once that's done, we can move on to bringing the water in. So I need to set up the water facility, but I don't really want to show that just because, I mean, you've seen me placing water extractors before. It's a little bit boring. So I'll probably just jump to it being done. So we've placed the majority of these now, and I just thought it would make sense to start working out the water logistics of this build, because I haven't really thought about that. And I know we haven't done the water section yet, but we do have the water pipes coming in, and my first thought was we're going to have pipe bugs. We always do. So the idea here is that we're going to bring the water up to this point, and this will act as kind of a reset to the head lift. So once the water gets into this section, it's going to go down to here, and it will stop the sloshing back and forth above this point. So it should mean that all of these will fill up as intended. We need to do this for each segment. And the other thing that I want to do is make sure that we are bringing the water up from the other side of the bus. I think that'll be the right decision. That way we can actually see the pipes coming across. So the next question is where to stick these. So they'll be coming down through here up to this segment, and we'll have a little ledge here. And then from that point onwards, they'll run across the top along to these. Now, originally, my plan was going to be to run these just directly in line. So it would look something like that. But that's when it occurred to me that we're going to have pipe bugs. So the next thing is for me to work out where we're going to send these. I don't know. If we ran these all across in this position, it works because of the line here. But the problem is that we're not using that section. It might make more sense to move it across to somewhere like there. I also plan to cover all of this with a glass floor as well. So this is the bus. All the resources are coming down through here, and then they're going to, I've got a priority system. This is my first version. So we've got the resources that will come from this line. They'll run into here. We have the resources here. Now, the priority merger is going to prioritize receiving the resources here, and then it's going to be taking the resources from this side. And then on this one, it's the exact same system. So it's going to prioritize going to this side and then this system. I'm not sure if it will work. We will only know once this build is up and running, which we'll endeavor to have running with awesome sinks by the end of this episode. But that is what's running through my mind at the moment. And I think if we were to run that all... Oh, maybe we should decorate this as well. Yeah, it would be nice to have some kind of walkway here so that we could get down to the lower levels. I've totally forgotten about that. Maybe we won't use this little walkway after all. All right, let me continue with this. And once it's done, I'll show you. One thing I will say is this has taken me about 5 hours from placing the first refineries to the ones that we've got up to so far. It is so much quicker building at scale now thanks to the blueprints and the auto connect feature. I'm really happy with this, and it does mean that we're going to build some massive builds in the future, unless of course we break the game. Here we are. It is pretty much done in terms of the production buildings. We have 12 rows of 12 refineries. So that's a total of 144 refineries at 250% clock speed, even though we only need 142. So there's a little bit of leeway there. We've also redone the water so that rather than on the foundations, we have foundation frames, which opens it up a little bit more. And we brought them across the bus like I mentioned. On top of that, I have ended up adding the little walkway ends to each of the rows and found the walkways to the corridors as well, followed by our glass floor. And then from the glass floor, you can see we have our conveyors coming out all the way along here. This isn't actually all of them. So we have split them off, but there's another third of the conveyor lines all under here, which I'm still bussing across. So these are just going to run all the way along here, and then they're going to come out across over the center section. So we've got a ton, an absolute ton of conveyors. These are all going to be full is the plan, but we'll need to set these up with some awesome sinks. So we'll end up expanding this shortly. The other thing, I have sorted out the water now. So we have the water coming underneath this and then going up to the next level. And then all of the water is running to the given areas. And we're waiting to turn the water on. The other thing, and this is more for my personal enjoyment, I'm just adding a little bit of a scene, is we've closed off the iron here, and we're going to bring all this iron out, and we will add this to the facility as well. So it's just a little area. It made sense, if we've got it, to extract it. And obviously I need to cover all of this in, but the next thing is to go and turn on the water. And for that, we need to go around the other side. So to keep this build as simple as possible, here is the section of water extractors. We've just done a normal system where we're running 2 extractors to each pipe, and we're going to fill those pipes up. So each of these extractors are overclocked to 250% clock speed. and we just need to connect it all to power. The power's already there. I've just realized I've never used the larger power cables. It's just never occurred to me to use. And then we also need to connect all the pumps together as well. It hasn't copied the... Why was that? Oh, I know why. Ah, about power shards. Right, well, I will also do a slug hunt while I get a moment free. Goodness me. Which means we've used over 500 power shards on this facility so far. And this is before we've even thought about the ores, actually. I must admit, it is so much easier connecting all of these together with the new straight mode for the pipes, though. Thank you, CSS, for that. Now, we've made it back to the facility. For the iron, we are going to have to expand our train route. Thankfully, we've already, well, we got started on this in the last episode, and this is all done via blueprint. So it's going to be quite easy for us, I say once I get there, to just place these side by side in the auto connect in order for us to build them. So if you're interested in knowing how we've set this up, do check out the previous Let's Play episode. But we're going to take this all the way up and across to the Dune Desert. So we're gonna have to run it all the way along here, across the estuary, and then work it all the way through this valley, which should be fine. I'm not expecting any issues with that because there is quite a bit of space. While we're there, I'm going to grab a load of power slugs because I still need to overclock the water extractors. And then once we get to the Dune Desert, I'm going to place a miner on each of the iron nodes throughout the Dune Desert, and I'm just going to harvest them. We're not going to bother showing how it's done because we can do that for the many other videos that we will be extracting loads of resources from. But I will show you a before and after because it's going to take me a good few hours, I'm sure. From there, we will run the resources back over to our iron section here, this one, and then trial the actual build. And if that's running, then we'll be able to decorate. And yeah, we'll go from there. So let's get building. One of my favorite biomes, probably my favorite actually, in terms of the look, is the Spire Coast here. It's just such a gorgeous looking biome. And I think possibly, let me know what you guys think, but maybe we will build our mega factory there. I think that could be quite a fun one for us. One thing that I highly recommend if you are doing this kind of highway system, make sure that as you're traveling, you have... Oh, we're a little low. Oh, don't tell me I'm going to have to lift this whole thing up. I think we go back. But we could have some kind of little section where we split off onto the Spire Coast. And if so, we'll probably do another section over here. So we'll have 3 entrances so that we spread the load across the track. And with a little bit of luck, it'll look quite nice. But as I was saying, if you are going to be doing this kind of build, make sure that you take a resource train with you because I keep running out of steel. All right, so we have done the rail. At the moment, it is a bit of a sky rail. We have done it over there, but this definitely needs to be supported sooner rather than later. And as you can see, it's looking pretty sleek. I'm actually thinking I've got a few too many lights there. I think we could have done with lights every other blueprint. But I'm not going to change that now. We are living with that. We've also got our line running all the way through the ravine here, or the valley, and I have added one of the entrances to the Spire Coast in case we do want to do that mega base there later on. Just makes sense to stick it there now rather than have to edit it all later. As for the Dune Desert, it is ready to be harvested. We've added a T-junction right at the entrance because I'm not sure if we want to do another build here. So it makes sense to have that there so that we can expand later. And we'll do another one at the station entrance, which we'll place nearby to where that floating station is. That is just there so that we can power our radio tower there, which allows us to see all of the iron nodes in the near vicinity. So we're going to grab hopefully all of these, and we'll eventually do the same with the copper and the limestone maybe, so that we can take them back to base. But that is going to take me a ton of hours, and you've already seen that. So we are going to jump ahead with the magic of editing, and we'll go from this to this. Now, I had a little bit of a midlife crisis doing this build. Let me break it down. This section I built first of all, and I used right angle corners the whole time because that's what I'm used to. I then started using the curve mode and decided it looks so good bringing resources into the build. So I then rejected my previous idea to set up this section. And I'm actually pretty happy with this. So what we'll probably do in future biomes is use the curve mode almost exclusively outside of the facility. And then inside the facility, we will use our right angles. I don't have the heart to go back over this after spending hours doing it, which is why it looks a little bit weird. It might get to a point where we do that, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. We also have a roundabout here so that we can make use of any kind of direction we want to go in, whether we have a second level up on that platform, or we come out this way, or we go straight across and do that. But at the moment, all of this iron ore is going across to those two stations at the end. So we have two more. We have two for the copper and then one for the Caterium. There's not a lot of Caterium here, so I've just left that. But we'll get to those later on. Returning to the estuary, you can see that we've started to bring in those resources, and I have set up the awesome sinks, and they are turning on when they receive resources. At the moment, not many are running. You can see the blue ones, or the blue lit ones, are running. The yellow ones are waiting for resources. That's because we still need to add more trains to the line. Don't worry, we will do that. But more important things, first and foremost, we need to make sure that this is looking good. So I've started doing these supports, and they're really simple to do. Yes, and there we go. So that's in the right position. Basically, all I've done is I've taken this setup, and then we follow the middle section. I'm actually using this within the build as the central pillar. And all it is big pillars, little pillars, and then further little pillars and angled pillars. And then in the center, we've just gone and added beams with light. So we've been just playing around with the different textures of about 5 different pieces. But the important thing is I want to tie them all together. So what I've ended up doing here is just adding to the end 2 extra label signs so that it is tucked inside the, well, it's not the blueprint. So that's the other thing. The blueprint sitting on top of a set of foundations, which I've added underneath. And then we've got another set, and this is blending into that and then going down. And I think it is going to look pretty darn good once done, judging by that section there. So we just need to make sure we are in the middle, and then start adding these. We can do them in blueprint mode, but we still need to nudge them up because there's this tiny little gap for some reason. I'm not sure why that is. So there is a little bit of clipping through the build, and then we just tuck these in. And there's the train going back. Just need a couple more. Right, I'm gonna finish this, and then we'll head over to the build and hopefully see it turning on, or at least running. And there we are. That is the bridge across, and I'm really happy with how that's turned out. But we are back over at the facility now, and we're getting ready to get the next section started. So the first thing that I've done is set up these lines. Now we're capped at 780. That's the max speed of resources. So this one, we can't go any faster than that. We know that's a full belt, but I needed to check every single line, and we have now done that. And each of these, when they have the resources, does run at 780 items per minute. So we don't need to worry about fixing anything. All of that is absolutely fine. So you can see we're starting to get a load of resources through, but this has produced its own issue that I'm concerned about, and that is the train lines themselves. And to be fair, I should have thought about this beforehand. We have 2 belts going out and filling up their refinery lines. So each one of these is feeding their own dedicated line, each conveyor output. Now the problem is, as this is going to, it won't demonstrate because we don't have the resources in, but what I've noticed is occasionally we'll have a second train come along and cause the pause in the dropping off resources, which means we can't actually set it up this way. So the solution that I have in mind, we're not going to do that now. We're going to finish this build, and then probably in the next one I will readjust this. We're going to have 2 lines going into a single industrial container, and then we will have a single line coming out. And the idea is that this will allow us to fill this up, and I would rather have all of my stations full of resources and pumping them out, but then have a second train. So the second one of these, rather than go to this one, we'll go to the second station. And in the second station, we'll have the same system. So we will have 4 lines from that one, 4 lines from this one. But it does mean that the 2 copper stations will eventually be turned into iron stations. So we will still have the max throughput of 16 full belts, but in order to maintain that throughput, we're spreading it across 4 stations rather than 2. But the next thing that we want to do is make sure that we have a train station for the output of resources. Now, I'm not talking about the iron ingots. These iron ingots will head over to a facility to produce the iron. Also, one thing I should note is, though we have managed to set up a priority system, it doesn't work very well. So I need to rethink the priority merging system for lines, which we'll also cover in the next episode, because it's going to take a few thoughts from my small brain to work out, but I'm pretty sure we can do it. Now, with it being a new day, we have a new mission for this build. I mentioned yesterday that we were going to be setting up a second train line. So here we have the top section of the highway. So you can see we're going to add our supports underneath that. But we're going to use this to run a line all the way along this facility. Better yet, we're going to build out and add train stations. So we're going to have 2 train stations. One is going to be taking iron plates, and one is going to be taking iron rods. It's going to run across the whole top section here. So in case you missed the last episode, I do highly recommend checking it out because we do explain this more in detail. But the plan here would be to bring the base resources to the smelter. The smelter produces those resources and spits them out to a basic resource facility. And then those resources will head to the train station that is above, and this track will be isolated, or these 2 tracks will be isolated from the lower sections track. The lower section of track is only going to take the iron ore, the copper ore, maybe coal if we get to that point, and then bring it to a facility like this in order to harvest. Of course, we're going to need to set up a new copper line. But anyway, the second line will take the basic resources, and we'll also do the same for the Caterium stuff and the copper stuff, and those will be exported to each of the facilities to be produced into more advanced items. So that is the plan at the moment, and we're going to need a little bit more space. I think the first station will probably come out to about this far, actually. So let's just move it over so that it's halfway along that foundation. Yeah, I think that's the right kind of width. Width? It's getting late. The width. And then we will have on this side freight sections. And I think we're going to want to have 8. Yeah, let's go with 8. So that would be 4, 5, 6. So it needs to come out a bit further. 7, 8. And then we will have our station. And this will be for, say, the iron rods. And then we'll have another one just further along for the iron plates. We now have the 2 stations set. And I've purposefully placed them next to one another in this kind of line, simply because if we go further out, I think it's going to look a little bit weird, but I actually really like what we've done here. I'm not sure what we're going to do with this return line. I think it's too much space to do a circle. We could maybe, and I'm not sure if it would work, but this, what is this? This T-junction, I promise you it's a T-junction. We could, if we copy the exact amount of curves there, we can place them over here and then T-junction back onto it and add a straight line. I think that would probably look nicer. Yeah, we'll do that. The next thing that I need to do though is, as you can see, I've started doing here, I need to run all of the inputs for the station along the outside. The good thing though is it's really simple to do. So once you know where the input is on one of the freight platforms, which is here, we've got a straight line across going to a industrial buffer. Well, all we need to do is grab this, see where it aligns to, which is one off the centerpiece. And then all we need to do is run across to 2 foundations and it will be in this position. And we can do this all the way along without worrying about getting it in the wrong spot. Famous last words, right? I'm gonna have the same issue. I have placed them at equal parts on the foundation, so it should be in the same spot. If not, I'll eat my hat. But from here, we're going to run the lines, make sure that we've got the right resource. These ones are all the iron rods, which means the last 2 there are going to be taken from these 2. So we can just run this, thankfully, across, and we match that up. And then once I've done that for the rest of the lines, we can connect the rest of it underneath the floor so that they're going to the stations. And then I'll need to sort out some kind of awesome sync facility just so that we can make sure that everything is running. I have had quite a few people come into my streams over on twitch.tv/Totalxclipse where we're doing our builds for this Let's Play series. And they've been asking, why are we sinking so many iron ingots? What's the point of producing them if we're just going to sink them? Well, we're just maintaining the production at the moment. We're seeing how much we're producing, and then once we add more to this and we're happy with the output, then we will send them to the basic iron facility to be produced, and then they'll be sent to the train station, to then be sent to a sink once again until they're actually used in a facility. I don't see the point in storing the resources because we're producing this amount each minute. With the station now done and everything ready to go in regards to that, I thought it would be a good moment for us to get started on the decoration, but I just wanted to sit back and then I saw the aurora, and I'm so happy with how this is coming together and really excited to see what we do with this. One little tip that I will recommend to anyone who's playing this is to make use of the photo mode in game. It can be so useful to give you a better perspective of your build before it's finished. I'm really liking how this is coming along, but one thing that I've noticed is that it's starting to look quite cramped, and so we need to isolate the different areas or different levels. Oh, typical. Obviously, when you're using the photo mode, make sure that you're not by any enemies. Anyway, back at it. As I was saying, it's great for perspective and allows you to see things that maybe you didn't notice before. And I was quite impressed with how this is coming along. I'm very impressed. I'm really liking this. I think this could be one of our best builds. But at the moment, it looks very... it's on two levels. We have the lower level and then the upper level. And it looks very congested, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially when we're going for an industrial build like this, but we do need to separate the different sections, otherwise it's going to look very busy but not really pop, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do now is start looking at the decoration of the build itself, and I have started off with this as kind of our starting point for the build. We're going to have these little U sections throughout intermittently, and we're also going to have a space in between as well. So we'll have the window at the end of the ground floor section. So this, we want to have the windows at the end. That means have one, I want to say here, but Mr. Total here decided it would be a good idea to use the walkways, and as such, I can't actually see where it is. I think that was correct. Yeah, so we're going to bring that up 5, and we're going to make sure that we do the same with our foundations. They're going to go up 8 either side. I know we're clipping at the moment. I think we can get rid of that lower level. We'll sort that out. We'll use a wall or something to hide it, but we do want to make sure that we're in the right position for this. And then underneath we've got this little inverted ramp. Hopefully the rays of light will enter from this angle, just giving us a little bit more light in the build. The next thing that I want to do alongside all of this is to start filling in the back section here. Let's go with a painted wall for now. We can always change it if we want to. We're going to bring it all the way up to the top, and we'll probably go higher as well. But at the moment, the lighter grey from the concrete and the light grey here doesn't really work. So we want something with a bit more pop, something that stands out a little bit more. And I think our best bet would actually be to go with a dark grey, or failing that, maybe a carbon metallic finish. Oh yeah, let's compare it to the carbon finish. I certainly in this light I prefer the matte variant. Anyway, we're going to finish doing this section, and I'm going to run this all the way along, so we're repeating the exact same thing. I'm worried it'll look a little bit samey, but at the same time I think it will work for the smeltery, and we can obviously do it slightly differently for the iron facility once we've built that up. So we built it up, and this is what we've come up with. I'm pretty happy with this, but I feel that we need something to make this pop. Even against the train station, though it's a lot better, it still feels quite flat. So this is where the signs come in. So my plan here would be to place a concrete pillar just under the halfway point and just over, like so. This gives us a small section here, which I'm going to fill with, we grab ourselves a small board, we can place this inside. We're going to use this just to add a little touch of white, like so. And we'll run this all the way along on both levels. And then we've been using this sign across all of our build, and to kind of blend the themes together, we're going to do the exact same thing here. but it should actually lift this section away from the train station, or at least that's my intention. So we'll see once all of this is done. Another thing that I feel that we could do is maybe something here. Like we could play around with the detailing on these windows. Maybe I need to bring that down a little bit more. Perhaps we could tee it off with some beam connectors. Maybe make that darker. Oh, I quite like that. Yeah, I'm in two minds as to whether or not to add a second level of these. I think that might be a touch too much. I think we only need one line. So we will do that, and then after that I'm going to start adding the roofing all the way along there, and we'll see how it looks. I really like how this is coming along, but I think, going back on what I've just said, we do need a second line. So we will do that really quickly, and then we will add the front supports like I mentioned and start working on the ceiling. The double lines of signs works really well, I think. It brings it nicely together, pulling your eye, but also having those little details on the outer walls as well just breaks it up a little bit more. So I'm really happy with that, which means we can get started on the ceiling. So let me show you what I've just designed. Now I may have gone a touch over the top here, but we have developed this as a blueprint. So we're going to have a window, and then we're going to have these vents sucking all of that toxic gas out, and we've actually aligned them so they're almost in the same spot as the chimneys, and we're going to do this all the way along, and we'll nudge that into place, pick that up to there. Then we're going to fill this in, and we also want to have a space where possible for our glass framed foundation. And we've also got a part without the curved section, which allows us to just nicely snap that there so we can fill this in. So I'm going to do this for the rest of this build. It's going to take me a good few moments, and then we'll start looking at that section over there, because that's going to be quite important, I think. With the ceiling now done, we can start working on the elevator section. We don't actually need to do much with that. It's more I want to bring the focus to that for the future builds. So if we just head over there now. Another thing, I'm not going to do anything here because we're going to build the next section over here. So it doesn't make sense to work on any of that. But here we have the elevator, which will go up to the top floor, and then we can obviously expand this later should we wish to. This here is where we're going to be bringing all of the copper in. So the idea here is that once we've walled this section in, we're going to have another build very similar to this one, probably the same in design, which will be for, or more or less in design, which will be for copper on top of here. And the idea is that we have a stepped tier system, but we're going to need all of the copper to come down from somewhere. And I thought it would be great to have, given it's probably going to be similar to this, I mean, maybe half this amount, it would still be great to have it all come down an elevator shaft. So we're going to keep all of this space here specifically separated away, ready for that. And because we're going to build over this, we just need to do a basic wall across the back there. We don't need to worry too much about that. And though I will show you some of the shots of the build once it's fully done, we will probably save the tour for the build once it is, well, once it's all done. Because obviously we're going to have the basic iron, then we're going to have the copper facility. We'll have probably the basic copper here, the Caterium. I'm really excited with how this is being developed. So with that in mind, I'm going to now focus on doing this section. We're just going to fill it in. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this. Maybe we'll use like a darker color. Yeah, I think a darker color would be best. We'll have a corridor from one side of the build over to this one, linking with that elevator. I don't think it bears too much importance to show this, but we have just filled the back section of the build with a basic wall for now. This is going to be covered with something else later on when we build the rest of the facility, but we have got started with a corridor that will run all the way through, and I really like the idea of having like a squeaky clean floor. And often we've used the like the coated floor. It's quite shiny and works quite well for that, but personally I don't think anything is better than these signs, and also the amount of reflection that we get off them is fantastic. So I'm using a very simple blueprint here, and we can just connect it using the blueprint mode, so it's placed really quickly and easily along here. So we only have to add these two items, the board and the wall. And then once this is out the way, we're pretty much there. And that leaves me with the focus on what's going to come next. And we have a lot planned for this, as I mentioned with the other builds. So once we finish all the builds, we will do a grand tour of the smeltery, same as we will do with the diluted, well, the rocket fuel plant once it's done. So if you feel we've missed out any section, please do not worry, we will cover that. It's just a lot of work to fit in a single video. I mean, this is, I've just checked, and this build has taken, including the train line, which we did in the last episode, it's taken us 85 hours. It's quite a lot to cover in 2 episodes. So I do apologize again if it does feel like at any point we are jumping back and forth. I'm trying to show you everything that we're doing before doing it and finding the comfortable balance. And here we are with the build complete. I mean, I say complete, obviously we have loads to add to this, but this particular segment, and oh my goodness me, I am so happy with how this has developed. I have also made it so that it's walkable throughout. So from here we can go in and we have the actual floors all running. Look at all of that, goodness me. And then from here we also have the ability to walk up either onto the main floor, or we can go to the supervising layer as well. And despite it all being very similar, given it's all the same blueprint over and over, I'm really happy with how this has developed. We've got plenty of walkability. We're also going to expand this, like I mentioned, to go to the rest of the facilities once ready. And the other thing, look at all of this. We still have to add more trains to the line in order to increase the production, but it can cater for the 23,000 ingots. I've run that at full capacity already. So I am over the moon with how this has turned out. We just have to make sure that each of the other builds that we do from now on are equally as good and hopefully entertaining. Hopefully you enjoyed this. But there we are, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, hit the thumbs up and let me know your favorite thing about this build in the comments below. This is just the start of a massive build and I really am excited to see where this goes. But if you're a little bit further into the game, maybe consider checking out my simple turbo motor guide, which I'll put at the end now. Or maybe one of the other parts of this Let's Play, perhaps the train one, which we released a couple of weeks ago. Guys, until next time, thanks for watching, and thank you as always to all of our incredible supporters on Patreon, most notably our Lunar Eclipse patrons Fireflesh, The Calamity, Ben, and Star, as well as our Blood Moon of the Day, which today is Papa Snoozy. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.